G'day guys, Clint here recording The Full Landscape with Sarah from Tumbled. This podcast has been a long time in the making and I'm really glad that we finally got to sit down and have a chat. Sarah started up her business about 4 years ago and now supplies natural stone in South Australia through landscapers and homeowners and landscape designers, architects. Sarah has learnt a lot in her time in various businesses and is now getting to run the business exactly how she wants to run it. She's been quite open and honest through this podcast, so hopefully it's an interesting one for anyone out there thinking about starting a business. At the end, I list all of her contact details, but if anyone is interested to know more, all of Sarah's information is linked up underneath the podcast. Sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Been amazing to park, but now it's just starting to get full on.
Kent Town's no different. So our shop at Kent Town, it used to be this industrial
Kent
hub.
Town's, well, I had Eco there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, so it used to be this industrial hub. And then all of a sudden it's like gyms and, I don't know, protein ball studios and shit. And it's like...
Protein ball studios.
What are we doing here? I just renegotiated our rent and it's gone up. It should have gone up by 100%. Yeah. Ballpark. And it went up by, I don't know, 30%. But if it was in market, it would have gone up 100%. Yeah. But our landlord's good and he's like, look, you've been here for 10 or 12 years. You've never asked me for anything. You've always paid your rent. Yeah. There's 3 buildings for lease on the street. Yeah. So... But
there's a lot of buildings on that street that remain vacant for years and years and years.
That grey one down the road from us, that had someone in there for a bit and then it's gone. The problem is people want these like brand new tilt up. Yeah. They don't have a vision for those older buildings. Whereas we walked in and went, we can use this. Ours was offices. Yeah. And we ripped the internal out and turned it into a shop.
I think that's what you got to do. Yeah. You don't look at what it is, it's what it can be. Yeah.
All right, so for the listeners and the viewers out there, if you could please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you become, the matriarch of the stone world in South Australia? I don't know.
That makes me sound old. So my name is Sarah Wiese. And I've been in the industry for about 16 years, and that being the landscaping building industry, so particularly natural stone. So I have a business called Tumbled, and we have a studio in Gilbert Street. And so that we started the business, let's say 4 years ago in December. But previous to that, I sort of had 10 to 12 years experience with a large stone retailer. So that is me. I'm married, 2 beautiful girls, and so I'm here today to talk to you, Clint. What else do you want to know?
Was there a career before stone, or were you doing something previously, and then how did you get into it? Like, was it just a happy accident?
It was. So when I was at school, I wanted to be an architect. My dad was an architect, and then I was desperate to earn money. So my first job was, I did a diploma in hospitality, and then I moved to the Kakadu in Northern Territory and did 6-month stint up there at the Crocodile Hotel. So that was waitressing. So I sort of fell into hospitality because it was good money. It was instantaneous, and I already had studied it, so sort of had a bit of an understanding. And then, so from Darwin moved back, did a few bar jobs, but I was working on the sort of opposite end of everyone else's, sleep schedules, and then started in sports retail. So worked for an amazing guy called Bruce Nesbitt. It was the Glenelg, I don't even know what it's called now, Glenelg Sports Store, which was very iconic. I sort of grew up in that area. My dad played for Glenelg, so everyone sort of knew everyone around that area. And from there, I started with Rowan Jarman, who were a big sports retailer.
Are they still around?
No, not anymore.
I remember the name.
But there was stores, Tea Tree Plaza, Colonnades in the city, and I sort of grew with them where they gave some really good opportunities to people. So from there, I actually was really lucky, and I tried about 3 or 4 times really unsuccessfully, but got a job with Nike. Oh, sure. So I worked for Nike here in their office as a sales representative, and I worked for this amazing bloke, Peter McPherson, and it was very iconic. He was a very good tennis player growing up, so he was very iconic in the sports industry. So I sort of did 3 years here and then moved to Sydney and worked for his son, who was a manager in Sydney. So I moved to Sydney just after the Olympics, like 7 days after the Olympics finished. So I missed all of that, unfortunately. And so I worked in Sydney. So I'd already always had been in sales. Like I sort of had a bit of a gift of the gab. You know, I liked sort of, but I always wanted to work for companies that I had a passion for.
So sports was something that you were kind of drawn to just from family and
yeah,
connection?
I think so, because we sort of grew up in that area. I don't think I wanted to play sport, but I sort of liked the industry, and I liked having mateship. So with, you know, the blokes, I could talk to blokes easily. I could talk to, you know, obviously females easily, and I just sort of liked the industry. That was just good fun. And Nike was an amazing company to work for, like plenty of opportunities if I wanted to stay there. And I've got a lot of friends who sort of travelled the world with Nike, so pretty amazing company. But for me, I sort of wanted something else. So, you know, I could have easily sat in that position for years and years and years, but it was just more about what else is out there and how can I grow. So for me, I've always been motivated to learn more. And that's sort of, I then went from Nike and worked for Sheridan, the bed linen company in Sydney. And that was amazing. And then they gave me a position of export manager for Asia. So I travelled all throughout Asia and sold bed linen. Had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I actually don't even know why they gave me the job, because I really wasn't that qualified for it. But I got to see Asia, and it was an amazing experience just to see all those countries and just sort of get to know the clients in each country. So Korea, Japan, China, Hong Kong, Singapore. So that was really good. And then I sort of was at a crossroads and decided I could either stay in Sydney or move back to Adelaide. And so I chose to move back to Adelaide, even though sort of that was a bit sort of begrudgingly moving back. I didn't
For
really...
you?
Yeah, it was more so for family. So
you were married at this point?
I was married in
Yep.
Sydney. And I met a South Australian guy.
Yep.
And then that marriage lasted for not very long. And so I had a decision. I could either stay there, maybe meet someone else, hopefully, that was the idea, and have kids and stay in Sydney. But my mum's on her own, she had been sick, and my family was here. You know, home is where the heart is. So I sort of thought, I've got to make a decision and I've got to do it now. And I've always sort of followed my heart, and I think I've always had a good thinking in what's right and wrong. So I moved back to Adelaide and started working for 5AA, the radio station. So again, that was sort of a connection through the sport thing, and it's been amazing because it's been a good door opener. But you know, you can open the door, but then you got to actually succeed and produce. So yeah, I had fun at 5AA. I was selling radio advertising, and then a friend of mine who I worked with for Nike in Sydney, I introduced him to his now wife. So we were sort of really good friends. Like before kids, we all used to have Sunday dinners in Sydney. And then he called me one day, and so he used to call me Freddie. My dad's name was Fred. That was his sort of nickname as well. So he said, "Oh, Freddie, I've started working for this stone business in Melbourne." And he said, "You know, would you be interested in starting, you know, the Adelaide arm?" And I said, "Look, I'm not really interested. Like, I'm having fun. I'm going out all the time. This is a great, you know, lifestyle in this work." He said, "Just come over. Come and have a look at the showroom, and, you know, just come and see me for the day." So I flew over and walked into this amazing showroom with natural stone, and that was it.
You just fell in love with it?
I was hooked, absolutely hooked. I don't know, I think it was just about the creation of beautiful spaces, and obviously the material, and, you know, every material. And it's, you know, it's a bit of a weird thing because I get a bit stone obsessed, but it's just about the different textures and what you can do internally and externally. So, but I also love my clients. Like I think I'm a helper instinctively. So I love helping people create what they want, really.
So it was never the goal to have your own stone business?
No.
That was like, it's all, it intrigues me because a few things you've said, I have parallel vision or parallel beliefs around, like what you said about, you know, the door might open but you have to choose to walk through it. I think that there's a lot of people that see an open door and hesitate, and then it's too late. Like, you have to follow your heart, like you said. Like, that's your instinct, as much as heart, I think. And like, that's the accumulation of all of your experiences, and you're going, this is the move I have to make right now. But then also that, like, you know, there's not always a plan.
No.
Right? You're just kind of like continuing to step forward in what feels like the right direction. And then now all of a sudden you've got your own stone business.
Yeah.
And you probably at some point should have had a sports store.
Yeah.
Or a sheet retail shop or something, right?
No, I don't think there was enough for me in that.
The passion wasn't there.
Yeah, the passion wasn't there. And I think for me, I knew that I would be successful at some point. And I probably was in each sort of career.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably an unfair sentence because you probably were successful.
Yeah,
but just not.
I don't think selling bed linen in Asia I wasn't successful at, but I had
So
fun.
what, you quit before they fired you?
Yeah,
before they
pretty
found
much.
you out? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But, yeah, I think for me, so sort of the big aha moment for me was, interesting. There's certain things in your life that you will always remember. And there's a Tyler in Adelaide, Nick, and he said to me one day, he's a bit older, he said to me, love, what are you doing? Like, why are you working for this big stone company? Why are you not starting out on your own? Have your own business, make your own money. Yeah. I'll help you. I can introduce you to, different people that can help you. And I said, no, I'm really happy where I am. Like, I love who I work for. I love what they stand for. And then sort of got to a point in my career that I thought working for someone was a safe bet. And I had a conversation with my husband and I was like, I just don't really know, like I've sort of lost myself. I don't really know, I don't want to work for someone else now. Like I want to say, this is how I want my business to run, or this is how I want to represent myself, and I want it to sort of be on my rules. Not saying that I can't follow rules. I just wanted to represent myself the way that I wanted to, not how someone else wanted me to. And
I'm smiling because you like talking my story. Like, I'm pretty forward about how we want to do things.
Yeah, definitely.
I used to get in trouble a lot under employment for like my bosses would say, if you owned the business, you wouldn't do this. If it was your money, you wouldn't do this. And I'm like, yeah, I would. Yeah. Like, I think this is how we should be doing it. But
yeah. And I think sometimes I always found, probably being a female in male-dominated industries, continuously,
I guess, except sheets, right?
Then
even the reps, probably all men, right?
There was a lot of men, but it was sort of quite 50-50. Yeah. And that was a really interesting experience because we had an amazing director and it was a private company. And so I was part of the team who prepared the business for sale to Pacific Brands. So that was a really good learning experience. Like, I was like working with like adults then and, representing the business that then got sold. And then obviously public company, they followed the business, and that was really interesting. But so I had a conversation with my husband, and he's always been an amazing support, and he was working in the business I was working in. So it was very much a family-owned business. We were shareholders. I put everything on the line. Like I spent the last 2 weeks of my first pregnancy in hospital just with complications, and I worked the whole time. Like, I gave everything, and that wasn't because anyone asked me to. It was just me. Yeah. It was just me because I felt as though it was my responsibility, and I was the only one in Adelaide. So we're sort of at a crossroads, and can I swear?
Yeah, you can do.
And he said,
we did the podcast with Alex Martini that would have got up before this one.
Yeah.
And I would say that would be. He's probably said fuck 100 times, maybe 150 times. Like,
anyway,
it was full on.
He said, fuck it, let's just sell the house. Let's just start our own business.
No shit.
Yeah.
Like,
it was a split decision.
That's very, very supportive, because I think for a lot of people, it generally will be one of them, and it sounds like you both got the confidence, but generally there'll be one person in the relationship that is a safety person.
Well, he's the safety person.
And to say, okay, we'll sell the house, that's big, right?
Yeah, it is. So I think 2 weeks when we made the decision, it was on the market, and it sold within 3 days. So this was sort of December pre-COVID.
Wow.
So it was,
and then
sort
afterwards,
of, it was
your house was worth like 400,000 more. And
I know. Don't even talk to me about that. And we still drive past, and the girls go, I love that house.
Yeah, we'll get a better one. Don't worry about it.
That's what I say.
Yep.
One day. And so we sold the house, and then I was working very briefly for an interstate stone company, who we were so misaligned, it was not funny. And so then I registered the business on the 16th of December, and then sort of got everything going. And, like, we were doing a lot of things at home. Like, we sort of started from a basics. So we were like sticking like pool tile samples onto like, the wooden coasters that you can buy from Bunnings. Like, it was a very, like, I think back now and think I actually thought that was good at the time. Like, I was taking photos. I'd bought, like lights probably, but the smaller ones, I was taking photos thinking I was creating something amazing. And it really started from that. And I think for me, I already had the relationship, so it wasn't the range that people were buying. It was more so the experience, the knowledge, the customer service, the skill set, all that type of stuff.
Well, people I know deal with Sarah. They don't buy Tumbled, right?
Yeah.
And that might change as you introduce them to your team, and then they start to buy Tumbled.
Yeah.
And the reality is, and you know this, if your business is ever to be sold, it needs to be Tumbled, not Sarah.
Totally. And look, I've always thought about that potentially will be sold one day. And I think the way that like I've got 2 staff in the showroom, so I've got another Sarah, who's sort of the backbone of, she helps, she's my executive assistant, but she's more so...
So people ask for Sarah, we just assume it.
Yeah, we just say
yeah,
two
you're
Sarahs
talking
better
to
than
Sarah.
one.
It's all right, you're talking to Sarah.
And I think also when you work with people so closely, you morph into each other a bit, and we learn from each other. So it's not just them learning from me, it's me learning from them on how they approach things and things that they've learned in the experiences that they've had in their careers. So I think we sort of pull all that together, and I try to create a very relaxed working environment, but I also put the trust in people that they're going to do their job. And I think that happens. It hasn't happened with staff members. I think the bigger the team, the harder it is to manage. And for me, I wanted sort of more like a small boutique team who were specialists in natural stone. But then we're also specialists in solution finding, because I find that that's what we are. We find solutions to people's queries, but then we also get to be creative with designers and their clients. So it's good because sometimes, we can, they're going on this line and I just put in a few little teasers and it can then change. So that gives me satisfaction. It's not about selling 1,000 square metres of tiles. Oh, yeah, tick, I've made X amount of money. I do look at the money, obviously.
You have to.
But I never at the end of the week go, oh, wow, I wouldn't even know how much at the end of the week I've made, because it's not about that. It's about, I suppose, the jobs that you're getting rather than the money that you're getting. And obviously the money does count at the end of the day. But for me, there's got to be some type of emotion. Someone buys 1,000 square metres, they walk in, they go, yeah, I'll have that, I'll pay for it now. To me, that's sort of a nothing transaction.
Well,
it means
not your
nothing.
business, right?
Yeah,
that's a national tile chain.
Totally. There's no connection there. So, we always like to talk to our clients, and sometimes, we give them advice that are going to help them. And also, you're not going to win every job. So, and that's totally fine. And I'm not trying to be a big, well-known stone company. I'm trying to be me, the stone and the products that we like, that we source, so our staff have input on that. So, I think that everyone's comments and views are valid in my business. So, we sort of pride ourselves on that. And all I can be is the best version of myself.
Do you have got a goal to grow it? Like, are you at a size where it's like, if you can just maintain the size business that it is now, that's happy? Like, it gives you, it's not a lifestyle business, because that's sometimes can sound a little bit disrespectful, but like you've got what you want. You don't want to open like other states or like... Look,
I don't, at this stage, no, only because the reason why I wanted my own business was to have the flexibility of seeing my kids grow up, going on school excursions, having that opportunity. I don't want to work 24/7, because it's not, I could, in a week's time drop dead. What's the point, really? Like, I want to make money, I want to go on nice family holidays, I want to see my kids have these milestone moments, and I missed a lot of that. Like, I was working when both of my kids started walking at childcare. Like, as a mum, I've gotten over it, but it is a bit heartbreaking.
Our first child started walking in my care. My wife was on her once in her ever time of being alive, going away on her own, and I think it was for work. That was like a 3-day trip to Sydney, and she was a legal assistant, so she wasn't going away for work. She wasn't a rep. And I'm like, oh shit! Jax just starts walking through the kitchen. I'm like,
yeah, you don't normally.
And I filmed it, and I'm like, oh, she's gonna be so pissed.
I don't think. Well, they didn't tell me, so they were very good. They didn't tell me, and then
okay.
They started walking. I was like, did you know that she was walking? And then they were like, oh, there were a few steps.
Yeah, that's kind.
Things like
that's
that.
Really kind of them
it
to
is
do that.
very kind, and I think, but yeah, so my vision, potentially opening up another showroom, also beachside location.
Okay, so 2 in SA.
Yeah,
put them in the
potentially.
suburbs that make sense.
Yeah, I think so. I think because it covers that whole market along the coast, that potentially can happen.
So you got City East covered.
Yeah.
But then coast.
Yeah. I mean, most of coast, if they're going to use natural stone, normally have a designer, and the city is the city.
It's being managed before they're not walking into a stone showroom to look at stone. That's
It's a
part
destination.
of a conversation with the designer. So then when they need to look at stone, they go to you.
Yeah. And that's the business that we target is, architects, designers, pool builders, landscapers. So typically, the best client is one who's already had design done. So they sort of have a bit of a grasp as to what it's going to look like. Then they walk in and make stone selections, and it's quite easy from there. When a client has absolutely no idea, and it doesn't mean that it's not clientele that we want to attract, because we do, but some can be a bit more challenging than the others, because visualisation is a really difficult thing for clients to grasp. What's it going to look like? So, you sort of you just got to know what you got to do. You start with all of those questions and start with a big funnel and end up down here. So for me, it's about process elimination. Do you like cream? Do you like grey? Okay, you like cream. Okay, so then we start there. And talk to me a little bit more about your project. So, finding out what substrate's going to be installed on. Is it on a slab? Is it being wet laid? Is it on a sand base? So we sort of do all that and filter it down. And look, it's always been successful. It's never difficult. Every now and again you get a client that you just can't appease, but it's just more so about, could be a certain colour or selection, a Pinterest image that they're obsessed with, price, But I don't think we're high top of the line with sales, with price points. So I'm very mindful about what things cost. So for me, our sort of, sweet spot would be like 110 to 150 a square metre. Whereas, in the past, I've sold tiles in other businesses where it's like 200 a square metre. It's not installed on the floor, just a couple of tiles on the wall. It's been successful. But I sort of think that at some point people stop. So it's got to be affordable, because they may want to invest their money in furnishings, or it could be electrical goods, or it could be stone. So every job is different.
I think at the size that you are at, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's probably important for you to select, like if you've got, I guess, a Venn diagram of like people that want to buy stone with this budget, stone that costs this much, you want that crossover to be as much as possible. The further apart that goes, and the more like products that you have that someone might buy once every 2 months, you need to have a different kind of business to be able to manage that from a cash flow standpoint, a warehousing standpoint, a sales standpoint. Whereas if you can kind of cover most people's requirements in most people's budgets at the moment, but while still being creative and having unique stone in that, is that right? Like, is that how it is?
Totally. And look, I am probably better connected now having my own business than I was before. So now I've got a plethora of, this network in the natural stone industry in Australia and around the world.
Because you're allowed to?
Because I'm allowed to.
Yeah, whereas if you were working for someone else, you might only be able to deal with XYZ stone and ABC stone, and that's it.
Well, in my previous life, we never dealt with suppliers. That was all done from a head office perspective. So, I was given, obviously, a lot of freedom in what I did, but I didn't know what else could be done. So it was, you're limited in that fact. But now I've got these great relationships all over Australia, and that's really been talking on the phone. A lot of these people I haven't met face to face. Well, I have now.
Well, you couldn't for the first 2 years of your business, right?
No, I could.
Or one.
No, I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With COVID.
Oh, phone calls.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But you couldn't fly around, and which was probably helped you in a way, because you probably didn't have the time to leave your business to go flying around. Yeah. So it almost forced them to be comfortable dealing with new relationships on Zoom.
Totally.
Right? And it saves you money. You're not paying to fly, you're not paying for hotels.
Well, what I did is that I thought, right, I need a supply of product now. So I actually reached out to a company, and they were going to wholesale to me. So I actually met with them in Canberra, and then did a full photo shoot just before COVID.
Yeah, okay.
So
handy.
It was really handy, and then I could hit the ground running because I had samples, I had full-size tiles. And look, there were mistakes made along the way. I didn't make a huge margin initially because I knew what product essentially was going to be worth. So we could only put X amount on that product because we needed to bring it to the market at this, and we had to obviously absorb the interstate freight, which was part of our
But you
costs.
had lower costs of operations at that point,
Totally.
I'm guessing?
We had nothing. We
your
were,
house.
we had a house.
Yeah.
And I was, walking the beat.
So you were
so to
selling
speak.
out of the boot of your car, literally.
Correct, and I've done that
pop the
pretty
boot,
much
stone samples.
well, it was always very noisy and heavy, but I think that was the challenge, and then reintroducing myself to the market, saying, I've got my own business now, and I also didn't want to go deliberately direct to all of my clients because I just think that's just bad taste, and I was under no legal restriction, so it was just more so about putting the feelers out there, and I've had some amazing people support me throughout my, in my career, in my business, who have stuck by me and have been very, very loyal, and so they sort of spread the word. So, I talk about Adelaide, we got amazing word of mouth. In the eastern states, no. Like, you'd probably say the same, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I think that it works both ways. Like, if you had taken a shit on someone business-wise in those early days, that stays with you, and then 10 years down the track you're like, why can't I get into this whatever? Because you did the wrong thing, right?
Because
when I left, so obviously we've had very similar trajectories in business and life, almost. I just haven't lived interstate, but I've worked in big corporate retail, then I went and worked for an employer, and then I left and started a business that effectively directly competes with the employer. When I left, I had an expectation that all of these customers would follow. I didn't have to call them because I was the same. And when we opened Waterpro, or what was Fluid Designs originally, I was quite hesitant. It was my business partner that was like, we can do this. And I'm like, my former employer was great to me, and I didn't want to do the wrong thing. And it was like, fuck. But then we needed money, and I'm like, well, because we actually stopped working there to build water features. Like, we were going to install custom-made water features, and that's how we're going to make our money. And it turns out we're not very good at that. And so
I'm not either.
So I never finished the first one we did. We bought this. I don't know if it was a sandstone or a limestone. I'll show you a photo if we've got time after. But we put the wrong waterproofing on the blue board, and the tiles, when it hit 40 degrees, they would have started falling off. We never finished the water feature. Never got paid. But it was interesting to see who was loyal to me and who was loyal to the business when that happened. Did you find when you left employment, as much as you weren't going to actively pursue their customers, that were there some that you were like, in the back of your mind, if you're honest with yourself late at night, you're like, I'm really surprised they didn't come across. Like, I thought,
totally,
and then there's others that came across that you were like, I didn't think they liked me.
Totally. And one person made a really big deal about that the wrong thing was done to me, and that was sort of assisted my cause in leaving the business, and they said, we'll never go back there again. Like, we will support you 100%. Surprise, surprise, they didn't. But you don't forget that.
No. I had one of them as well. He's like, if you start your own thing, we'll support you. And then I'm like, hey, here's the stuff. And they're like, look, to be honest, we're happy with what we're doing now. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I made this decision based on partially on your support. And you're like, ugh.
But you never should.
No, and that's a very good...
And it's sort of, interesting when you go through, when my parents got divorced, they had this amazing big group of friends, and we used to have like Saturday tennis days and lunches and barbecues. It was amazing. Like,
because your dad played SANFL.
Yeah,
so that's a big
it was a big
right?
community, and all the kids that we grew up with, a couple I'm still really good friends with, like my cousins, and it was so much fun. And then my parents broke up, and all these amazing best friends that my mum had were no longer there. They were see you later. Because
they were the wives of your dad's friends, kind of thing?
Yeah, pretty much. But it's also, I think, that's just a bit of a celebrity status. They go with the celebrity because they think,
it's going to give them access to something. Whatever it might be.
It actually really surprises me, like high profile footballers, and this was back in the 70s when my dad was quite big, the doors that it would open. Yeah. I would get employment because of my surname. Yeah. And I was a female. Yeah. I couldn't play football.
Yeah, you probably can.
I probably can. I can kick a football. Yeah. But it's just quite interesting. However, let's go back to. So yes.
So from a business advice standpoint, it's not a good idea to take the word of people following you when you're starting.
Well, that
you have to assume no one's
talk
coming.
is cheap, Glenn,
as
we all know.
Yeah.
And I think that goes a long way with everything. You can say, I always say to my kids, actions speak louder than words. So you can have someone say to you, you're a really good friend. I trust you and all that, and then they can dog you in the next corner. That happens in business, and do you know what? It is what it is. I think I was upset because it was a personal, it was not a person. I was offended that what they said wasn't actually true, but then you get over it. As soon as you get busy and you get these jobs, you're like, oh my God. And then people contact you and you think, I thought you actually hated me. And it's just really interesting. And, I worked for a business between starting my own business and the other company I worked for. And I'll always remember it because there was a big job that there was major issues on before I actually started this business. So I sort of inherited the issue, and the company I worked for said, we're going to replace the whole lot. So I was like, yes. So, and I knew this client quite well, this builder in Adelaide, and I rang them and I said, we're going to replace the whole job. So don't worry, it's all good. It was such a good news story. They're like, thank you so much. A week later, that company said to me, oh no, we're not going to do it now. We're reneging. It was horrible, and I think I resigned a couple of weeks after because I don't do that. That's not how I operate.
Would you have stayed under employment with them if everything had kept going well?
No, because they would swear at their customers and tell them to fuck off, and that's just not how I roll.
So not in line with your values.
I was actually horrified. Yeah, but even client orders will arrive and they'd say, oh, we pulled a square metre out of that client order for samples. I'm like, but hang on, they've ordered that stock. They paid for it. Why are you taking stuff out of their order?
As in, hoping they wouldn't notice, or just...
Yes. I just think it was totally unethical, and it just wasn't my brand.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that they were very successful at what they did, and that's fantastic, but it wasn't me. And I couldn't put my name to it because it would affect me.
Did they do you a favour in a way?
Yeah, totally.
So it pushed you closer towards, I needed to start.
Totally, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, I loved this industry for so long. And then I was sort of like, I don't know who I am anymore. And I think sort of it was just a bit of a, talking with my husband, and he sort of, just said, snap out of it, do your own thing. You can do your own thing.
Was he a competitor of yours for a period?
Yeah.
Did he work for one of the opposing stone companies?
For 6 months.
Yeah. How did that go? If you're happy to talk about it.
I'm happy to talk about it because it's so weird.
Yeah, well, I don't know how I'd handle it. Especially if I had an employee leave here and start something in their other... It would be very hard for me to comply with the Australian government's regulations around unfair dismissal. I'd just be like, mate, you're gone.
Yeah.
But
well...
They were fine. Enough that he stayed there.
It was quite a bizarre moment. So I had left this business. My husband had stayed. So because we needed an income,
and he's
essentially,
in logistics.
He's logistics. But this was all new to him. He sort of fell into the business through me. We had met a couple of months before I had started in the industry, but then he sort of joined the industry. So he came from a different industry and a different background, different skill set, but he's very, very good at logistics, very good at that side of the business, and, he's quite physical, doing the stuff that I can't do. So the company knew that I had registered a business. However, I was under no contract. So the contract had been lost. Because I think...
Physically, the contract
was not anywhere to be seen.
It wasn't where it should have been.
No.
I think we've got a bit of that here, actually. But that's probably a lot... most of my employees aren't under contract because I just never got around to it. So
no, I'm a bit the same.
Yeah, we'll work it out.
I think the confidentiality part... And I was never going to share any confidential information because it wasn't mine to share. I had everything up here. So I had started the business... and he was still employed with them, and then they started to try to make life a bit more difficult for him the following year. But they had known, I think they thought that I was never going to do it. And one of the directors in that business said to me one day, what's your 5-year plan? It's funny, all these 5-year plans, I personally don't have a 5-year plan. I want to be alive in 5 years, and I want to have seen the world a bit more. Yeah. and I want to have a beautiful house. But a 5-year plan professionally, it's always been like bullshit to me, because I think, why can't we just live in the now? You know, I understand financially maybe, but I'm just not all about that. I'm not really about KPIs. I'm not about I'm not, because I think on paper, and you can see your sales figures, you know who's pulling their weight and who's not.
I might be wrong in saying this, but you might change your view on that as the business grows.
I will.
And you might, and I think I was very much like that for a long time. And then all of a sudden, no, we've nearly got 40 staff. And then if you're not having those KPIs, it's not just that it's like you're in this beautiful place right now where you've got like a small group that you trust and you know them all, and you can see both of them every day.
Yeah.
So you know if there's something that's a bit off, and you're like, I think she's Sarah, like something's going on with her, like because she's not like she normally is. You address it straight away. I go 30 days without seeing some of my stuff.
Totally. I understand that it has to be done when you've got a big team. Yeah. Totally.
So he asked you, what's your 5-year plan? And you were like, I
can't remember what I was saying.
I think
now.
You were going down like...
Yeah. I don't even know who asked me what my...
You said one of the directors of the previous
company. Yes. She said, where do you see yourself in the future? And I said, owning this business, because we were a shareholder. And she said, Sarah, you're never going to be in a financial position to own this business. And I thought, game on, Mole. It was totally, I was like red rag to a bull. Okay, here we go.
Hold my beer.
But I was still working for the company. And then maybe, I don't know, within the next 12 months, I left.
So that was just a kind of a rock in your shoe, and then you were just like, nah.
Well, I think when you undermine people and you're not aware of... And I believe that I gave everything to that business.
Well, it sounds like you could have been a great employee forever.
Totally.
Given the right support and financial reward, right?
I was told... And I was paid really well.
You wanted a nice house, you want to travel more, and you want to watch your girls grow up.
Yeah.
You can do that with a job.
Totally. And it would have been a lot easier. Mind you, I sort of feel like the responsibility and the stress of business was very much real in the same position, whereas now I'm 100% accountable. So I'm learning more of the back end of the business, that in the other business there was a whole accounting team. So I'm involved in everything. I touch everything. I've got to understand things. I've got to know what GL accounts are and all that fixed assets.
I feel like that should be mandatory before you're allowed to have a business, but it's not.
Well, it is if you actually went and studied, I suppose.
Well, I didn't. I learned on the fly.
Didn't.
You get audited by the ATO
and
get a $140,000 bill, and that's a big lesson in, all right, cool, we have to pay super and BAS on time. Sweet.
But then it's also people you put trust in, like professionals you put trust in. Like I paid $70,000 of GST that I didn't have to, because certain import charges weren't coded correctly.
Did you get it back? Or
It got reconciled later, so it was fine.
So it's just a saving. But that $70,000 when you're a baby business, that pays rent.
Yeah, because you shit yourself. When you get a tax bill and you say, how the hell am I going to pay this? I've got to pay my staff, got to pay my suppliers, and I hate owing people money, but unfortunately it's just business.
The nature of the beast, right?
Yeah.
You're running an import business.
Yeah.
You're holding debt and getting debt held against you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I mean, we're probably, and I think for business now, we're at such a big growth that it's hard to maintain. Like the cash flow is... I mean, you would get it with such a, the size of your business. Yeah. It's real. Like cash flow issues are real.
I had this really shitty realization a couple of years ago that without external investment, I can't outgrow about 20 to 30% growth per annum.
Yeah.
Because I can't afford it.
Yeah.
It takes too much fuel out of the tank and then something stops.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't want external investment currently. At some point we might, but I want... Like you, I like to be in charge. I'm not a democratic leader. I'm a dictator. I will listen to everyone, like you said before, but ultimately I want to make the decisions, and I don't want to have to go to a business partner or a board and go, what do you think?
I agree, yeah.
And that might change. Like when I've got this $100 million goal in my mind, I'm like, well, that might need help, right? But 22% compounded over 10 years, I'm at 100 million. Yeah. So it's not out of the question.
Totally not.
I get what you're saying, and you kind of like... Early days, it would have been easy to go, look, girls will buy another house in 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Because you'd think, well, I'm making this much money, we could do that. But the reality is you keep growing. Every one of those dollars is more stone, another showroom, more staff, training. And whatever.
I don't think I appreciated that in my career that side of the business, but you do now, because on paper, you know, I had a bookkeeper, and on paper we'd made $1 million profit. Yeah. Little did, and I was like, I didn't really say it to anyone, but I said to my friend, I think I might be a millionaire. I was like, this actually doesn't feel right. And then I went back in and checked things. I was like, hang on. There was like, and you know, blind Freddie would have been able to find it. And that's when sort of alarm bells, I was like, Jesus Christ. So we had changed bookkeepers a few times. I've now got someone in-house. And my accountant, who is a great mate of mine, from when I was younger, we don't socialise so much now, but he's very, very smart, came from really not much, and then is super successful, works in this accountancy business. He's a director, and he's got other, obviously, people involved, and he helped me start the business. And then he was too big and maybe too expensive for sort of my infancy. I've gone back to him because I just said, you know, I'm growing so much. I need your help. But I also need an accountant to say, hey, Sarah, have you thought about this, this, this? In the previous 3 years of trading, I didn't have someone sort of saying, you know, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, that's what you need to do. No, don't do that, do this. So it's so important who you align yourself with. If it's an external contractor, if it's an accountant, if it's a bookkeeper, all those people, and learning from all that advice and mistakes.
The sad thing is, like everything else in the world, you can't afford the greatest advice when you need it, and then when you can afford it, you no longer need it. Like it's like, you know, we were the same. We had the accountant was my business partner's dad's accountant. Was kind of, I think he almost treated it like, oh, these kids I'll just do their BAS, I'll just do their tax at the end of the year. And we hadn't lodged 5 BAS statements out of 8. I didn't even know, I wasn't taking care of that, didn't even know it hadn't happened. I'm like, well, hang on, shouldn't you be watching that? And he's like, I don't do your BAS. And so finding, this is my accountant's going to love this because it's just every time I say it, it's like another ad for them. But finding, I think in business, you want to have access to a great accountant and a great lawyer or lawyers. We have multiple lawyers now. You don't ever want the lawyers, and you need the accountant every day. And I think if you can get into a big firm at somehow early, you know, like doesn't have to be one of the big 4, but a big enough firm that they've got enough clients that they're seeing mistakes happen in other industries, or they're seeing, you know, tax law hacks that, like, do you know what I mean? Like they've got more exposure, so they've got 150 clients. Yeah, they've got the experience of those 150 clients. Whereas if you're dealing with a bookkeeping accountant that's working out of their shed, and they've got 8 clients, they're not learning anything new. So
no,
you know,
I mean, the first bookkeeper I had, she was actually quite amazing. She sort of knew all the laws. However, the mistake of you know, miscoding certain items that were seen as an expense of the business, which I paid GST on. That was sort of too big of a mistake for me to warrant continuing that. And, you know, having said that, she was then talking badly to me, to my staff, about me, to my staff. And I was like, hang on, I'm paying you. Yes, you are helping me, but sort of hang on, there's a line that's been crossed. And then I knew that things weren't professional and in line. So, look, you know, you live and learn, and I've made mistakes with suppliers, you know, thinking, oh, that supplier overseas is going to give me the same product at a much discounted price. It's always too good to be true. So, you know, we've made mistakes. You know, I make mistakes every day. Everyone makes mistakes every day. And that's what I say to my kids as a mum, you are always going to be learning. No matter how old you are, you've always got to be open to learn and open to change. And I think when you have that mindset, things can be accepted a bit more easily. And I also like change. So I don't mind that things change. I don't mind that things progress. I don't mind looking at better systems. Like I really love all of that. It sort of gives me a purpose, I suppose. I like improving and trying new things.
I guess on the changing and the new things side of things, like I guess I want to kind of get into the detail a bit more about the business. So you've got the showroom with display, right? So you've got a display that you've built. How often are you expecting to rebuild that showroom? Like, because obviously that's labour, money, stone, and it's interrupting, right? Like you kind of, is it a pain in the ass or?
It's definitely a pain in the ass. Like, I don't think people change out their displays, and I think, you know, I was conditioned to think that, you know, I work for this company, I've got this amazing display, we've got this, you know, 25 square metre wall of stone, and, you know, we're not just tiles on a wall. And I now understand what the tiles on the wall mean.
You said that to me I don't know how long ago when you spoke to me about it, but you kept referring to tiles on a wall. Yeah. So that's obviously something that's...
Well, it's a bit demoralising to that business, saying, oh, well, we don't just put tiles on the wall because that seems cheap. Yep. You know, we do 25 square metre walls. But that 25 square metre of walls can be seen there for 15 years. So you've got to be able to interchange. So the way that our studio's been set up, and we were very conscious that I didn't want every single hard surface covered in stone, because to me it sort of looked a bit poxy, and we wanted to create more like a gallery space.
So that it's a real world look. Like, we did that with our display at Railways. Yeah. We only used one colour paver because I didn't want it to look like a display. No, we did
change it out in sections, areas, right? But the way that we've got it set up is we've got display frames. So we actually had some fabricated, they're really heavy, and so we do our walling displays, but we can interchange them. So those actually then lift off the wall. We can then knock it out.
Hang a new back wall up and then...
Yeah, so new wall claddings. We've got a couple on display in bigger areas, and then we'll do a second stage. But the showroom was sort of designed to have pads of displays, yes, because you've got to have that, because people need to see it installed. But in regards to changing it out, I would say my husband probably says, no, we can't do it because it's too disruptive, too expensive, annoying, and also it's a leased space. And then my question is, you know, back from retail, is, you know, how much are we earning from every square metre in this space? So if that 20 square metre space is not earning me money, then we rip it up. So you just do it. So I don't really care about that, because I think that you've got to be, again, open to change, open to improve, and the minimal disruption that it does cause will create so many more opportunities long term. So I just sort of think, you know, you throw caution to the wind and just do it.
Would you have done anything differently? Obviously, I ask a lot of people with this question, like, what would you do differently around whatever? And everyone's like, nothing, because, you know, the journey is part of the learnings, blah, blah, blah.
No,
but with this set building, like, would you have done anything differently? Like, did you sign a lease for too long? Was it the wrong location? Is there not enough parking? Like, if you could change anything about it, would you? Or like, it kind of, you had enough experience?
So I'll tell you what initially happened. So we moved into this amazing space in Gilbert Street, and, you know, we had gone...
And you wanted city?
I wanted city or sort of Richmond area. Yep. That was sort of because I wanted to be on the west side of the city, not the east side.
Yep.
Just because where I live, I'm currently living at Brighton, nice. But to actually travel through the city, and the Clipsal 500.
That's very much probably why we don't have any irrigation shops
it was a pain
on the other side of the city. Because I live on this side.
Yeah.
We have no businesses on that side.
And I also think that in Adelaide, everything's 15 minutes, sort of. Yeah. So I knew that didn't really matter, but I wanted it to be in a nice street, and I've always loved Gilbert Street.
Best pub in Adelaide.
I wanted there to be accessible parking. Everywhere is a pain, really, unless you're, potentially, I don't know, in a warehouse. You got massive space. So, so we had designed our showroom, installed the showroom. So it was a leased space. We couldn't stick it directly to the concrete slabs, so we used a sacrificial matting and glued it, and then the stone didn't dry. So we'd spent all this money, and the stone didn't dry. So we had like bare bones of cabinetry. We couldn't put the marble on until we found out what was going on. We couldn't do certain finishings, and then we turned the mains off. It took us 3 months. We were sitting at home having a drink, and my husband said, "Oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Why don't we turn the mains off?" And then it just kept spinning. So there was all corroded pipework underneath the slab.
So it wasn't your fault?
Wasn't our fault. So it was a big insurance claim. So everything had to be ripped up. The concrete slab had to be waterproofed. The actual owner didn't know, but the building guy who was managing it, he knew, because then it tracked back to people that I knew who polished the floor, who told me. So it was just quite interesting. But so we redid the showroom.
Did you get covered?
We were covered. We didn't have to pay anything.
Time wasn't covered, right? So you lost
it was a pain in the ass. However, it got done the second time round better.
Yep.
So the first time round, my husband did it with a landscaper, and the second time round, my husband was not available, which was probably good in a way, because it was the finishing detail. And also, I changed what I wanted to go where.
Was also the owner of the business, of his landscaping business, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't have like apprentices in.
No.
So your husband was the apprentice.
Yeah, but he is very handy, so I can't really say that. But then my view had changed on what I wanted to install. Yep. So we sort of got to.
It's funny because you got to almost have a dry run, not pun intended, but like a really shitty joke. You got to do a dry run, and then go. Actually, you know what? That wasn't going to look good.
Shit. Yeah. I'm changing it.
Yep.
Which I was happy with. You just got to go with the flow.
Location wise, though, great.
Yeah, I love the location. Yep. Yeah, I love the location, but you know, from a commercial perspective, you're limited, right? So. You could go Norwood. You don't want to go on a main road because the parking's crap. Where do you go?
A disconnect between your retail and your wholesale and your warehousing, right? Because it's not commercially viable for you to hold stone in the city.
Yeah, no.
But you're not going to have anyone drive out to Wingfield to look at a display centre. Well, you might, but
you can. Some people do.
Yeah.
So we had a warehouse at Wingfield, and then we had a warehouse just around the corner from here at Dry Creek. And then we were doing month by month with a landlord who was amazing. Yep. But he sort of said, every now and again, I'm just going to have to move you to one of my other locations. And stone is not easy to move, right?
Not cheap either, right?
It's like 12, truckloads of stone.
And each of those
and now
at $150 an hour for one of those trucks or whatever it is.
It's mental. And now we've got more stone. We're sitting on $1 million. Well, we've got $1 million worth of stock in the warehouse.
So you are a millionaire now.
Well, not really, because I don't.
You're a stone millionaire.
Yeah, I'm a stoner-naire. That's my claim to fame. Sarah Wiese.
Stoned.
Died at
That would have been a good business, stoned.
Yeah. Well, we did go through all that. I used to work for a ice cream shop when I was a teenager called Coneland.
Yeah.
So everyone had these really unique jokes. Can I have a cone? And I go, oh, wow, I've never heard that before. Anyway, if I called it stoned.
You just didn't need the jokes as an adult. You're like, we're not doing it.
Nah. No, I always liked the word tumbled, and it was more so about the word and how it looked with font. So we sort of played around with it and went through we just did it at home. We went through all different fonts, all different names, and what sort of resonated with us.
Because you got the .com.au, didn't you?
Yeah.
Just the word tumbled.
Yeah.
Which I was surprised by. And this is the way my brain works. Yeah. Like when I start researching for the podcast, I'm Googling stuff. I'm like, oh, wow, that's interesting. It's not like tumbled stone wholesalers.com.au.
Yeah.
Like you got tumbled. I was like, okay, that's cool. Like, did you go through that process of like
straight away?
Can we get the .com? Can we get the can we get the Instagram?
Straight away, we got the .com.au.
Before you bought the business name? Before you registered the business name?
No.
But in that same...
Within that same time period, when everyone was having Christmas drinks and getting drunk, I was doing, my little business. Oh, yeah, I was probably getting drunk too. Yeah, probably. So what would I have done differently? Probably, things that you can't control, like COVID. I think that I should have travelled more to suppliers to look at the quality of finishes, meet with people, but... I sort of thought it was quite easy. I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? It's quite easy. Well, there is a reason why you don't do it this easy, because people can say they're going to send you this and they send you that. And then you arrive and once you import product, what can you do? Send it back? You can't send it back.
Even if you could, if you had to cover the cost of it, like just the freight would kill it, right?
And the freight at that time, like what I'm paying for freight now versus what I was paying for freight 12 months ago, it's mental.
Is it a third now?
Yeah. It's mental. But, I just say, it's a learning. Would I done things differently? Of course. Yep. Because what I know now to what I knew then is completely different. So I think everyone would do something differently.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's more pride, isn't it? And ego?
Yeah. And maybe you don't know what you don't know, right? And, I have regrets around not buying our buildings because I rent all of them, but I also couldn't have grown the business to the size it is if I had bought buildings.
Yeah.
I look at length of leases and should we have signed 10-year leases versus 3+5s, because it would be nice to then spend money on the building and we know we've got a 10-year runway. But
totally.
What if the business struggled in the first 12 months and you're locked in for 9 more years?
Yeah.
I think some of the smart things we've done recently is to find a building bigger than we need.
Yeah.
Like rent a building that's going to be suitable for the business in 18 to 24 months.
Yeah.
And then grow into it.
Yeah.
Whereas we've outgrown this building, and I'll show you around before you go, but it's a 1,000 square metre warehouse plus all this office space plus a 4,000 square metre hard stand, and we're full.
Yeah.
Right. And so we need to hire. I think we've got 2 jobs advertised now, or 1.5, and there's another one that's going to go live. There's no desks for these people, so we have to actually. Like, we've got different problems than we used to have.
Yeah.
You know, the businesses are growing. Well, Lawn Hub especially has grown so fast in the last 30 days.
Yeah.
We don't know where to put stuff. So you you have different problems. But I guess I think if you don't, like, you talked a lot about learning and making mistakes in the same sentence before, and I think that it's only, like, it's a cliche, but it's only a mistake if you don't learn from it.
Yeah, correct.
And it sounds like, you know, if you were to do it again, you're just looking through a different lens. Like, you're going, okay, when we move in to a new location, the first thing I'm going to check is the dampness of the ground, right? More than anything else, because you've had this experience.
And do you know what's interesting? It's sort of similar to when you're buying a house, right? You get a building inspection, and there were a couple of locations that we had people from the industry come in and look at it. And then there was one place on Sir Donald Bradman Drive, which was a little shop. We were like, yeah, we can do this, we can do that. It's really cheap rent. And probably, you know, you get what you pay for. And then I had a couple of people from the industry look at it and say, nah, don't do it. So then when we moved into when we were looking at Gilbert Street, we did the same thing. But no one, and now in hindsight, I look back at the fucking photos and I see all the efflorescence. Like, I should know this, right? But I was just so one-tracked.
Well, you get excited and
you're
like, this is the
building.
building.
This is great. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Everything was
but
great.
You know
it was all positive vibes.
If you had discovered it, you might not have pulled the trigger on it.
Yeah.
Then you would have opened it, like this sliding doors moments, right? I believe everything happens for a reason. And I think sometimes when you hear about, you know, cancer diagnosis or like murders, and you're like, fuck, how do you explain that? But for everything else, everything happens for a reason. And I think if you had picked up on that, you might not have signed the lease, or you might not have moved in.
Well, I would have, but the only reason why I probably didn't look at it is because the owner has just spent $60,000 on polishing the honed concrete. So my thing was protect his investment, So I sort of, I got distracted.
Focused on that.
I got distracted.
Yep.
But now I look back at the photos. Like, I took photos, I've kept everything. I think, what an idiot. Why did no one say, hey, there's a bit of efflorescence, have you checked the moisture content and that? And the only thing that would have changed is if he had said to me, right, install it as you would recommend to a builder, I would have waterproofed the slab, because it would have stopped everything. Anyway, hindsight. But, you know, I can't ever say that I've been misguided, because I take it all on and I just learn from it.
What other learnings did you take from working in retail, or I guess with the other businesses, into this? Obviously, you would have worked for other stone companies, and you would have had opinions about how they should do things differently. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about maybe stuff that you just wanted to do differently because of instinct, and maybe some stuff that you learned from working at the you know, like in retail, that you've rolled in, whether it's the physical building or the way customers are treated or the experience.
I think so my majority of my career in the natural stone industry, the company was excellent. Like, I must say that very, very smart people running the business. And I think when I joined the business, it was sort of more like a family-owned business. And I think the bigger it grew, and as time went on, there were more sort of, you know, heads coming in, like, you know, national sales manager, general manager, accounts manager, logistics manager, and it sort of lost that feeling of what it was all about. Like, you know, we all knew each other's kids, we would catch up, we would talk, and then I sort of started to feel like the team was segmented into states. So you're Adelaide, you're only 2% of the sales, and City of Churches, and why would you ever... honestly, that shit pisses me off, because I would never say, oh, Sydney, rat race, like, you know, can't buy a house, you know, like, I just think it's just bullshit, really, because it's not about the state. I don't know. To me, that all the bullshit got to me, and I think probably I knew that there was an expiry date for me, that I was overwhelmed, I was overworked, potentially I was under-supported. You know, it's sort of like, oh, come on, Sarah, you know. And I was one of the few females on the management team. And I just felt as though the direction after sort of, you know, getting more successful on the money and, you know, all that sort of stuff from what they were earning, you know, it just started to get too big, and it lost the personalisation for me. And for me, I think that when you make the process from, for a customer really difficult, you lose people. And I think the more layers you put of complications for a client, they sort of think, well, why am I even dealing with you? Like, this is annoying. Like, someone from Sydney's got to contact me about my delivery to site, and then I've got to talk to someone from Melbourne to pay my account. It just got too head officey. And for me, people liked that, not necessarily you want to be chasing money, because we only ever offered a small amount of people on credit terms, and I don't do that now at all, because I don't want to be the good cop and bad cop. So I don't want to sell you 100 square metres of stone and then ring you in 3 months' time because you haven't paid, and then try to get it back, but then expect repeat business. So we just don't complicate the system, because it's an uncomfortable conversation and the relationships are very different. It can ruin long-term relationships. I don't expect credit from other people. Only the bank.
Well,
and finance companies, but
I
think the
bank has no issues not having a relationship with you. They'll just take
I
your
think
house.
For people, and I'm really lucky with the team that I've got. Like, so I've got the other Sarah, and she's great. Like, she's communicates with my clients, but does it through me. So we've started this amazing idea that on my drive into work, we do my emails over the phone, so it just gets done. I don't have distractions, because when I'm in the studio, there's phone calls, there's people, there's Sarah, and you get it too. Oh, what do I do here? What do I do? Yeah, it's just mental. So we do that first half an hour. But what I like is my customers, and not necessarily people go, why do you let people do it? Well, I don't know, because I do, right? I've got customers or landscapers who might ring me on the weekend. If I'm not busy, why wouldn't I answer the call? It's not like, Sally from Somerton Park wants to ask about, the cracking in her pavers. It's my clients who I know have got relationships with. I'll help them out. Like, if I need to go into the showroom on a Saturday or a Sunday because I think it's worthwhile, I'll do it. Like, and I want to run my business like that. I'm not saying that I expect my staff to. I want to run my business like that. People might call my husband on the weekend. He might go and someone wants to pick up on a Sunday. We just do it. And I think in Adelaide what works is that personalised service, and that's what I never wanted to change. And I found in the bigger the business, the more layers on top, and you lose that personalisation. That's just me. I appreciate that, and I also appreciate it back, but it's not often that you get it back.
Well, I think it doesn't mean you stop doing it, right? Like,
I'm not going to stop doing it,
because
it's what
right
I
for
like.
You. And I think that it's funny that when you were saying about answering the phone, my dad has his own business, and when I first started, he's always like, if your phone rings, you answer it. Like, that is someone that needs your help, and they're going to give you money to help them for the result, which is the way you started the business. You're never too good for answering your clients' calls, and I'm on 24/7, so I get it, and not for everyone.
I'm the same.
But for the people that are partners with us, So, so we've limited time. I just want to ask you about the, I guess, customer interaction and customer acquisition. So obviously you've got the showroom. Do you make that available to designers if they want to bring a client, or if they want to host? Like, I've seen you've done lunches and stuff for architects, which looks really cool. Like, talk me through that. Like, is that something that you did with your old place?
So we did it in the old place. So I mean, I suppose for me, the way that I set the showroom up was a bit more like a gallery, so we can interchange it. But I also encourage my clients to bring in their clients, and they can have a meeting. We can be involved. We don't need to be involved. We can provide hospitality. So, we've got a really nice coffee machine like you do. I think we take very good care of our clients, and I think that other companies or our competitors view that as being snobby, or the client's going to get the client's going to get charged $5 more because they had a coffee. It's certainly not the case. It's about the experience to me. So you can walk in, we don't care what you look like, you'll still be offered a tea or coffee like everyone else. So yes, designers can bring their clients in, we can do stone selections, they can spend 2 hours at the round table, but we've got 3 tables that they can choose from whether or not they want a bit of privacy. And for me, I like the vibe of having people in. Like, when you've got an empty showroom, it's sort of really, it's not the point.
As much as it's not a sterile environment.
I like noise, I like ambience, I like learning from people. I like hearing other people's pictures. I like seeing other textures. You know, it's not always about stone. Like I like seeing timber finishes, and you know, I've got a good relationship with Tom from Tongue and Groove. Like I like hearing about his products and the way that they sell and all that type of stuff. And I like to see people's passions. So yeah, I encourage people to come in, and then we do sort of like a lunch and learn where we'll invite, you know, companies in, and we'll just talk about our stone and they'll eat lunch. And it's really nice because you sort of get a bit of, it's so hard these days to get time in front of companies and to have their attention with their phone, or they got deadlines, to get them out into our showroom. You just get an hour of their attention, and it's good. And normally, you know, they learn something that they haven't learnt. Like it could be, we talk about sealing, or we talk about, you know, what you can do at 1.5 height on a wall, and when do you need to incorporate mechanical fixings, and what can you do with that, and can you use blue board with stone cladding? And we have all those conversations that sometimes people don't think to ask when you're going and dropping off samples. So I think time's so valuable now, but I think if you can make it enjoyable in small sections, that's sort of where you can get impact.
Yeah, we find the same. If to get people to come to an event now, it needs to be, I feel like it needs to give them, this is such a common sense sentence, but it needs to bring them a benefit. And
totally,
it either needs to be entertaining. We talk about this with our social media. It needs to be educational or entertaining, or both.
Yeah.
And I find as well, if you can do something that helps your client make more money or run their business better or be more efficient, they'll come and learn about that.
Yeah.
Like if they're learning how to install stone better, or how to sell stone better, or how to upsell to a different stone with more profit, or whatever it is, you'll get them. The last question I have, which I've been asking clients, guests at the end of the podcast recently, is, if I was a magic fairy, I'm not a magic fairy. I'm a genie. I do look like a magic fairy.
No, you look more like a genie.
And I could give you all of the skills, relocation, everything that you required to do any job in the world, and you could change jobs. What would you do and why? And it can be anything. Like, has there been any, like, you know, like a sports person, or I don't know, dentist, V8 supercar driver? Like, is there something that growing up you thought would be cool, or even now you're like,
totally,
I'd rather be a landscaper, you know, or a designer, or whatever?
Look, for me, I think when I was growing up, I was quite creative, like musically, you know, I loved calisthenics, all that type of stuff. I think, you know, look, if I had a dream, it'd, you know, be on the stage, really. I loved entertaining when I was younger, and I think it's so interesting to look at kids, you know, and you would know from having little kids that they'll put on concerts and put on performances, and then they get to that age where they're conscious of being embarrassed. It's such a shame.
Well, both yours are probably just clearing that age. I think 10 feels like a number for some, and obviously some that care less about what people think. Keep going. 10
is definitely, I think, and that's what I'm going through with my daughter, is that she's more consciously aware of what people think, whereas before she was the real entertainer. It was so similar to me, and I was watching her grow up, and I'd say, oh my God, I did that. Like, I used to do that. Like, I would spend hours and hours in my mum's granny flat, you know, dancing with my cassette tape or my record, and you know, I just loved all of that. So it'd be something on the stage, and I think people who know me well would probably say, oh yeah, I get that.
I think you and I have such similar personalities. It's not funny. Like, I haven't had an answer to that question, and I'm waiting for someone to ask me back. And while you're talking, I was like, yeah, I'm the same. Like, to be able to sing really well, or to do stand-up comedy, I'd love to be a successful stand-up comedian.
I think you'd be an excellent stand-up comedian.
And it scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, like I watch like The Voice and stuff, and I think, Jesus Christ,
how good would it be?
I actually thought I was really talented growing up. I think that my mum, I think maybe I was a good singer, but I think my mum definitely told me I was very talented, and so I actually thought I was going to be famous.
Right, I think I had the mum who said, you can do anything. Yeah. You are amazing. You will be able to do anything you put your mind to.
But you have to be that parent.
Yeah.
You have to for your kids, because it gets too late. Yep. And I've got one who's very shy and won't take risks, and I've got one who... not dangerous risks, but she's a free spirit. Like, she will, if she was comfortable, she would put on a show.
I've got twins who are those two personalities.
Yeah.
So my daughter, really scared of new experiences. Like, I have to take her to the dentist and like basically do hypnotherapy and NLP with her to get her comfortable. Did that yesterday.
Yeah.
Her brother will open a door with his head rather than his hands, just to bang. And
Is he his father's son?
Oh, more. Like, he
Yeah.
has all my negative traits. And I think some of my positives are kind of coming out, but
Yeah.
he's just unwilling to compromise.
Yeah.
Like, boisterous, entertaining.
How old?
6.
Shit.
He's a fucking animal. And I
Yeah.
said to Celeste, he's fine. Like, he's preset successful.
Yeah.
No one will take advantage of him.
Yeah,
He can look
because-
after himself.
yeah, he will look after
he'll
himself.
see through bullshit, and he'll fight for what he wants. And because she'll negotiate with him and be like, I'm telling you what to do. I'm your parent. I'm like, no. He needs to be encouraged to continue to argue for what he believes in. Don't take that away from him. Like, keep arguing with him.
Within
Like,
reason.
Right, because when you're a mother trying to get 3 kids in a car with 3 minutes before school starts,
And
it's
you got
not a
someone
time to have a
who's-
life lesson.
yeah.
Yeah, so
You gotta, I think that it's, it's like, the dogs, they need to know that we're all the boss before them.
yeah. Well, we got one
And
of
that's
them
the
as well.
same with kids. I mean, every kid is defiant, aren't they?
Yeah.
But
And if
it's
they're
just
not,
how you channel
are they
that.
really doing it properly? You know what I mean? Like, you kind of want them to be a little bit
You want
defiant.
them to be, definitely. I've got my 13-year-old as a really good negotiator, so she'll probably go into like special service forces and
Yeah, basically
negotiate
hostage
people off her.
negotiator or a
She's-
salesperson.
Yeah, none of my kids want to go into sales. They don't want to take over the
No
business.
one
so
knows
I'm gonna
about
adopt.
sales. That's the problem.
I'm going to adopt a
No
kid.
one knows what sales is because it's not.
No, because they think it's easy.
Well, and also, I mean, the reality is every job has a sales component, right?
Totally.
Doctor, lawyer,
Yeah.
accountant, they're all selling themselves. Meeting a person at a bar and asking them for their phone number, sales. Like, sales
Yeah.
is everything.
I try not to do that very often.
The problem is, well, I do it at a bar, not for that reason, but just to sell sprinklers, right?
Yeah, sure.
But at primary school, they're like, when I grow up, I'm going to be a firefighter. No one
Yeah.
goes, I'm going to be a BDM, because it's not known to anything. But the reality is, every other job
Everyone
is
sells.
sales.
Yeah.
So, anyway, you need to go. Thank you so much for coming
Thank
and doing this.
you.
I think
It's
we
been
could
a
probably do
pleasure.
this again for another hour and a
Oh,
half.
we
But
could just do it for a whole day. It'd be fun.
let's do that. We'll come to your showroom, drink some wine, eat some
Yeah, that'd be
prosciutto,
good.
and talk shit. If anyone wants to find you, tumbled.com.au.
Correct.
Instagram, pretty
Yes.
active.
Instagram, Facebook. We've got a website. And we've got the studio at 105 Gilbert Street.
So we'll link all that information up in the podcast, and
Cool. Thank you.
people can call you 24/7, right?
Oh, they can. Anytime.
Just one
Here's my 1-800 number.
answer. Goes to other Sarah. All right, you better get out of here.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries.